Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Creator Workflows webinar, Learn, Build, and Govern. For today, we have the following hosts. I am Tim Simon, the capability lead for platform application development at Platformation. That means my team and I take care of all kinds of developments of custom solutions on the platform and also support our clients with citizen development, low-code, no-code on ServiceNow. We also have Jules Weites here from the Creator Workflows team at ServiceNow and Ashutosh Munot, 9 times ServiceNow MVP. What we will be talking about today, anything related to Creator Workflows and citizen development, low-code, no-code. I'll be starting off with basically starting on the topic of setting up the right skill set, talking about a low-code, no-code development program, touching up on some governance topics here, and then I will hand it over afterwards to Ashutosh, who will elaborate on the governance part and also will be talking about a citizen development maturity program. And then last but not least, we have Jules, who will be demoing the Creator Studio, the latest development environment on the ServiceNow platform for low-code, no-code development. Really just released, so very much looking forward to see the demo of Creator Studio at the last part of this webinar. All right, so let's get started with setting up the right skill set. Before we talk about that, what is actually delegated low-code, no-code development, right? It is basically the concept that, let's say, anybody without too much experience on developing solutions on a low-code, no-code platform can do so by making use of the tools available on a low-code platform, right? So with configuration and easy-to-use drag-and-drop tools, workflows, forms, and catalog items, for example, can be built on platforms like ServiceNow. Yeah, and then a low-code developer, basically somebody with no coding experience, maybe some IT background, but definitely not somebody who already developed complex solutions with coding. And what is then needed to make such a delegated low-code development program a success? You need really a proper approach to it, the right program, the right framework, let's say, to make that happen. And this is something we divide into 4 different phases, basically. The enroll, enable, equip, and engage phase. In the enroll phase, it's important to identify the right low-code developer personas. It could be like process owners, for example, who are really close to the process, which should be developed on the platform. Or also, for example, a business analyst is usually a very good persona to be part of such a program. But in the end, it is also very important that people are being found who are very motivated to be part of such a program, and really also like the champions who are very much IT enthusiasts and are willing to support such a program and to bring it into the organization. And then we are in the enable phase, and this is really where let's say, building the right skill set this is the key moment to build the right skill set. We need to enable the people who are selected for this program. We need to give them the right design and build support. But also, although the tools available on the platform for low-code, no-code development are very simple to use, the learning part is very important, and that is usually how we do it. A hybrid approach between online learning, but also classroom trainings, where people get really the hands-on training they need in order to understand the tools available and to make this program a success. In the equip phase of such a program, it's important to have the right intake process to really understand what are solutions we should be building with low-code, no-code on the platform, and then to make use of the latest citizen toolbox. And here at the end, as I said, you will present the new Creator Studio, which is the new toolbox available by ServiceNow. It is also very important to have a center of excellence to give the citizen developers the right support. This is something I will also dive a little bit more into on a later slide. really a key a key point to make such a program a success, because without the right support, it will be very challenging for the citizen developers to make this a long-term success. Last but not least, in the engage phase of such a program, you really want to measure what is how is the success of not only of the different solutions being built, but also the success of such a program. But you really want to get the understanding how the apps, the applications are being used in the production environment. Are there any applications which need to be improved or maybe deprecated? And for that also, there is the tooling available in ServiceNow to get these insights on the platform. And then, of course, on a program level, you want to make sure that you continuously improve the program, really see, okay, where can we adjust so that the program runs even more smooth, and make sure that it's a long-term success. In the second point, I also want to talk here a little bit about governance, not too much, because Ashutosh will, in the second session or the second part of this webinar, will dive more into the governance. But generally speaking, it's important to have the right intake process to make sure to understand in a way, okay, like what is a standardized intake process, so that we can really clearly define which solutions we should be building on the platform with low code, no code, and which not. The architecture in terms of governance needs to be really clearly defined. What are best practices? What are the architectural principles and guidelines? And then also the citizen developers need to be made aware of these guidelines. When it comes to delivery, there is standardized delivery practices, which also then really define how things are being designed and built. And also these need to be defined and clearly communicated to everybody part of such a program. When it comes to the deployment, there's a lot of automation capabilities available on the platform, which help to automate the deployment, and also, for example, testing, of course, with automated test frameworks. Something which can easily be forgotten is then, let's say, in terms of governance, also the support part. Here it is very important really to see, okay, who in the end will be responsible to support a solution built by a low-code, no-code developer or by a low-code, no-code development team. There is different approaches to that, but it just really needs to be clearly defined when setting up the governance for such a program. Why is governance so important? Yeah, we definitely want to avoid the shadow IT. We really want to get the insights of what is running on the instance. We don't want to have any unmonitored app. We really want to reduce the risk there. For that, such a governance and a clear communication of that governance are really crucial. And of course, also next, the compliance and security. You really want to make sure that all the apps follow the standards and best practices, especially when it comes to security topics. And that you can only reach if you have the governance in place. And when it comes to consistency and standardization, here we need a governance to make sure that apps are of the same quality standards and follow the same principles, so that there is not a totally different user experience when people use different applications built with low code, no code. And then when such a program is set up and is starting to run, right, you need to make sure that the low-code developers have the right support. And this is something which can be done in the form of a center of excellence. That is like a community of practice who delivers the functional design support, build support, architecture support, but can also deliver building blocks in form of a building block factory, right? So if there are certain components which are used or need to be are required for different solutions, then the Center of Excellence, also with pro-code developers, if required, can build these reusable components, which then can be reused by the low-code developers for the different solutions they are working on. And then last but not least, also provided by the Center of Excellence, it's the quality gate, the setup of automated test frameworks to check if all the agreed best practices are followed, do an automated health scans, and of course also the change and release automation in order to make sure that in the end a product is delivered which fulfills quality standard security requirements and has a good user experience. If you have all of that in place, a good citizen or low-code, no-code or citizen development program, or also and also the governance in place, then there's a lot of potential by such a program. Applications can be delivered with a really high speed because there is no back and forth between IT and the business, because the business is building their own solutions. Also, we see that apps tend to be very effective because the people working on the process who are really familiar with the pain points and bottlenecks, they build these solutions. So they build it in a way that that it really adds value for them in their work life. And last but not least, cost savings are of course also possible with the low-code, no-code development, because it's not necessarily required that for every solution which needs to be developed, that this is done by the IT team or somebody external. So these are like the three main areas how such a program can really benefit an organization taking that route. Okay, so that much about my part, and then I would hand it over to Ashutosh, who will dive a little bit more into governance and maturity.
Hey, thanks, Tim. It was a nice overview already. I will reference to these points during my session as well. But before that, I'm Ashutosh. I'm the platform owner with one of the financial institutes within Netherlands. I have vast experience in ServiceNow. I'm also multiple times MVP. I have my own YouTube channel, my own podcast. So if you guys want to get in touch with me, please feel free. Then going back to the governance part, if you go on to the next slide, we will see that everything starts with a problem, basically, and we identified this problem. We were really short on the resources. We wanted to reduce the development cost because business don't want to wait on you to deploy things towards production, to build things on the platform. We wanted efficient solutions to be built within less time. And at the same time, we were having pressure where we wanted to accelerate productivity of our DevOps teams so that they can automate their processes and digitize their processes. But to do all this, if we wait on the professional ServiceNow developers, it takes too much time. So what we did is we identified a solution, and that is nothing but App Engine Studio from ServiceNow, where we can give control and power to our developers, let's say citizen developers within the organization, so that they can develop their own business processes into ServiceNow, and they can accelerate the productivity by integrating with multiple tools, by having their own user experience. And of course, ServiceNow is known for the workflow engine, the flow designing engine. So it's a very powerful tool when it comes to automating and digitizing your processes. The most important advantage of the citizen development program is mainly empowering your users. That is how we see it. So we came up with our own maturity model. The most important part, which is setting up the foundation, because if you are good with your foundation, it's like a building, right? If you are constructing something, your foundation needs to be strong, and then only you can build on top of it. So that is the methodology which we follow. We spend time with our security teams, with our architects, with our so-called pipeline teams within the organization to really focus on where we want to take this project. And we did it in 3 phases, basically. So we wanted to use as many as features from ServiceNow, out of the box features. Again, we didn't want it to customize a lot, because that is one of the learning. If you customize a lot, you have to maintain a lot. So my recommendation is really focus on the standards which ServiceNow gives and follow ServiceNow at a certain extent so that in future releases you are compliant. So in phase 2, what we did is we gave some extra power. We had a discussion with our existing citizen developers to see where we are lacking. what they are not able to do, what else we can provide within this particular program. And I will go through in detail in the next slides about what we did in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Then we wanted to increase our footprints because as a platform team, I want to help everyone within the organization to digitize their processes. And we are running this program from last 4.5 years now, and we see some success. We have more than 150 citizen on this platform. Lastly, we really wanted to go to the business users. When I say that, we have 3 personas within the organization. Team also mentioned the personas, right? We want to see who can enroll to this program and how to engage these people. So those 3 personas, we had 1 persona called as business users who are really non-IT people, and that was our phase 3. So to summarize this maturity model, first, we spent a lot of time, couple of months on setting up the standards. And we only started with requests. So when I say requests, we only started with catalog items. Then in the phase 2, we elevated our program and we went to integrations. And in phase 3, we are currently in phase 3 where we are giving power to non-IT developers. That being said, how did we do it? Because governance plays an important role. I really like this terminology. If you see on the screen now, this was our phase 1 where we said, okay, you have a car. To drive a car, you need a training. Then if you want to go from destination 1 to destination 2, you have to decide which kind of car you want and what kind of path you will take. So you need to have a vision where you want to go. And at the last, you want to learn how you are driving the car. So that is what we kept in mind in this. So here you see, we had to decide on tool and technology where we say, hey, okay, I want to deploy towards production, but ServiceNow provides multiple ways to do that, right? What are we going to opt for? How are we going to do that? At the same time, we also want to train people in the platform. Are we going to train outside the platform or within the platform? So these kind of decisions you really need to take at the beginning of the program. That will help you to improve your governance, to do continuous improvement. And also if you follow the structure which team just explained, where you see what kind of enablement programs you can do within the organization to enable citizen development, please think of it properly. Because our learning says if you train people with the right tools and with the right components within ServiceNow, you can elevate this program within less time. Lastly, you should be very clear with what they can be able to do and what they are not able to do, which will help you in monitoring the whole program and also identify which kind of applications are used, which can be deprecated, and you can maintain the integrity of the platform by implementing some other solutions from ServiceNow, which we will speak. On to the next one. If you want to take something out of this session, from me at least, this is the slide which will explain you how you can make sure that different personas play a bigger role in your citizen development program. If you see on the left, you have ServiceNow PO Guild. It is a combination of product owners from the ServiceNow platform within the organization. So we sit together, we decide that, hey, okay, on this module, I want to start citizen development. For example, custom application is just one part, but we within our company also has HR, FM, ITSM, security. Do you want to do citizen development there? If the answer is yes, then we decide in this particular group, when are we going to do that? How are we going to do it? And we hand it over to our ServiceNow pro developers, because they are the people who sits on the right. If you see ServiceNow Developer Guild, they decide the standards. They decide till what extent we can give the low-code, no-code development opportunities to people within out-of-the-box modules from ServiceNow, but also with custom applications. So please don't run two different low-code, no-code initiatives within the organization. I would say have a clear picture and personas which should align with your existing modules as well as custom applications. We had that struggle in the beginning, but when App Engine Studio came in, we had a lot of flexibility with permission sets. Lastly, if you see citizen developers, they are only interested in developing in a faster way and deploying in a faster way. Now, what we did is we opted for a couple of solutions for deployment. So people who are using App Engine Studio can also use CI/CD pipelines from ServiceNow. Few of the applications which are out of the box, let's say, they can use application repo, which are store applications. And world famous, I say it, update sets. If you want to deploy update sets, we created in-house solution to deploy update sets from one instance to another instance, which has change management integrated into it. Being a financial industry, we are audited on regular basis. And because we respect compliance a lot and security a lot, we need to make sure that we provide end-to-end visibility during deployments towards our end users, but also the auditors who will audit us. The middle image, if you see, we have ATF, instance scans, and secure development. This is mainly the quality control check, which team also explained in the beginning. This plays a major role in defining how much system is going to get polluted in production, because sometimes you really should have rules where you say, hey, okay, I don't want to deploy this particular update set or particular application because I see a threat. It's not a best practice to deploy it. And that is what we are doing during the deployment. We get end-to-end visibility during the deployment about even if it's update set, even if it's an application deployment, or even if it goes to app repo. And this was not done right in the first place. Why I'm saying that? Because that was our learning. We started very slow. We started with a couple of teams. We sat with them, we listened to them, we got a feedback, and then we improved this over a period of time. And that is the reason governance is very important, that you should be really focusing on what are the negatives rather than always focusing on the positives. So if we go to the next slide, you will see being a platform owner, for me, it was very hard to monitor everything in the platform. I had to go to different places to govern this. The last place specifically, where you see you want to do continuous improvement, you should have some insights that the application is used, how many requests are coming in for that particular application, how many new requests are coming for building the applications, how the licenses are being used within our environment. Can we deprecate some applications or not? That all things were not possible until App Engine Management Center came in. If you look at App Engine Management Center now, it gives me a single pane where I can monitor all these things. Initially, it was really a pain before ServiceNow came. ServiceNow launched App Engine Studio. The best part which I like about App Engine Management Center is the subscription management part, because as a platform owner, again, governance comes into picture there. You should govern that license properly, because if you don't do that, you have to pay a hefty amount. And ServiceNow is not that cheap. It's a costly licenses, right? Also, with respect to that, you want to know, or you want to show to your organization that, or let's say CIOs, that, hey, this is the technology, no code, low code. We want to promote this more. How can we do that? The insights on App Engine Management Center. See, in 2022, we were, let's say, with 10 developers. In 2023, we are with 100. And 2024, I am forecasting to go to 400, for example. And that is all now possible on App Engine Management Center. It's a cockpit for me, where in the morning, I just go and see if there are some new requests, some new approvals pending. Everything is possible. Also, the deployment mechanism, which it comes with App Engine Management Center, has a change management integration now. So if you have not upgraded, please upgrade it. And last but not least, these are our some key takeaways, that governance is really a key to success. Please spend proper time on governance. Make it very clear to your citizen developers that there is a thin line between pro code, and no code developers, because sometimes when you give power, they want to do more and more and more. But please do not customize the system more to give more power. If you do that, we have to make sure that we maintain it. Be very vocal to say no, and be very patient to listen to the feedback, because you will get nasty feedback when you start this program. And that actually helps to make your foundation even more stronger, your governance uh, more seen, let's say, towards your audience. And I would like to end with have fun. This is a fun project. So creator workflow is for the organization, for end users, rather than pro code, no code developers. So please embrace this journey and try to promote low code, no code platform more and more by showing the value of App Engine Studio within ServiceNow. That was my story. And I would like to give it back to Tim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashutosh. Very interesting to hear how the citizen development journey went for you, and to hear all about all of these lessons learned and how you managed this program on your end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to go to the last part now and hand it over to Jewel, who will talk a bit about the Creator Studio.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Ashutosh, for leading to hopefully something I can show, especially around App Engine Management Center. I'm Jules Weiters. I work as a solution consulting manager for Creator Workflows in ServiceNow. I cover Europe North, which is the Nordics and Benelux in our world. And I wanted to show, let's start off with a little bit of introduction and then go to a live demo, which of course is always a dangerous thing, especially if you do it on a brand new product, right? Last week, we at ServiceNow released Creator Studio, which is part of the App Engine development, let's call it environment. So App Engine Studio is not going away, but we're adding Creator Studio to the mix. Reason for doing that is we still see that some low-code developers, or some more actually non-developers, experience kind of a cliff when starting developing on ServiceNow. That leads to the fact that what Ashutosh said, that it's very important, and like Tim said, it's very important to educate people. But we want to take away some of that education, and part of that is doing it with Creator Studio. So it's a very low entry, low barrier, guided experience for creating request fulfill applications. Very simple applications, but that's a lot of the activities. Maintaining and filling the service catalog is a lot of activities that are now being done by ServiceNow developers, which is kind of a tedious job, right? So why can't we have business departments, analysts do a little bit more of that work? But then we should provide them a good tool set for doing that. And that's what Creator Studio hopes to achieve. But it fits into the same ecosystem. So if we go into the next slide, it's still part of App Engine Studio, and it's still feeding into Management Center. So it's a different UI, so to say, on top of some of the existing capabilities. But it still feeds into the governance. So governance is a lot of process, but of course the tool set can help. The fact, of course, tools cannot do everything, because rules and regulations, which is basically what governance is, need to be defined within the organizations. How am I going to use this tool set? How am I going to use the capabilities of the tool set? But the tool set does have some guidance and some frameworks, and especially around deployment and manageability within App Engine Management Center that can help govern how applications are being developed. And that same process, that same cockpit that Ashutosh talked about, is still part of Creator Studio. So the moment that you're done with your simple app in Creator Studio, you submit it, and it goes to an approval flow and a deployment flow that ends up in Management Center. And I think that was my last slide, if I'm right. So let me start sharing my screen, and hopefully you can follow me along with what I'm going to show you. So I already opened Creator Studio, and hopefully you can see it and let me know if not. And I'm actually a restricted user. So I'm not a experienced ServiceNow developer. I got access to Creator Studio, but I am a restricted user. That means if I want to create a new application, it actually becomes a request to create a new application. So there is already governance in the intake process. I cannot immediately start creating applications. I need to define what I want to build, my new finance, and of course typos, Bill. And why am I doing this? I need to approve finance requests, and I should not have taken finance because I'm very hard at spelling that. So filling out all the details, it actually submits a request for a new application. So in the interface, immediately there's no change or there's no new application. But what happens is that there's a request sent to Management Center. So if I go into App Engine Management Center, and this is the cockpit that Ashutosh was talking about, and I will zoom in a little bit later on all the details, but for now, let's go to requests. We have a new request type called app. So we used to already have something called intake, which leads to an entry point into App Engine Studio. But now we have something called a request for an app. So here you can see my request for my new finance application. And I can now, as an administrator, by the way, I'm on a different environment now. Of course, I'm now on production and Creator Studio. That's why you see the banner change. And Creator Studio was running on my development instance. So on my production, I have my management cockpit, and I can now approve, and there's a slight misconfiguration on my end. So I need to fill out an email address, which should be filled out pre-filled, but in this case, it isn't. But once I approve, this new application is being created. And if I now go back to my development environment, and if I refresh my screen, if all went well and there's no caching, my new finance application is created. So instead of 3, I now have 4 applications. So I have my applications and I have all applications. Creator Studio does have some caching. So because I just refreshed the screen, I still need to request access. But if I would refresh and log in and log out again, this application would be accessible by me. But it serves me to also show you that I can access applications that are not owned by me. So if I want to have access to an application, I can say, I want to request access. And this is a collaboration request that we already had in App Engine Studio. It's a bit superfluous for my own application, but I can request access for applications owned by others. Let's not do that for now, but this becomes a collaboration request that can be approved again from App Engine Management Center. If I would look at the application, I can see that there are collaborators. In this case, it's my own application. So I'm the editor of this application. But I could also, from my perspective as the owner, I could add other people to my application so that we can work together on this. Now let's start by opening up an application. And what Creator Studio does is a guided experience. It doesn't start with having to create a data model. It starts with a template that basically at the moment there's one. You can, of course, from an organization perspective, create more, but it's a record producer template. So in this case, I can just only pick one, and I want to just have it shown up in my service catalog. So I can pick which catalog it needs to show up in. And once I save and continue, I can start building my form. That form will be exposed through the service catalog or through my Now mobile. And then I can submit that form and I can run a process against it. For now, let's look at an application that I already created a little bit more, so to save a little bit of the time. So my travel approval for regional travel. This is an application or a form that I already created. And I can go to view. I can see all the options that I have. So because of Creator Studio is limiting the options for non-developers, I can create request forms, I can create automations, and that's more or less all I have to do to fill the service catalog. But if I click on edit, you can see the options of editing forms, which means I have a limited set of drag and drop UI capabilities. So I can add new elements, I can do it by drag and drop, or I can do it by this way. You can see that there's a limited set, and I can easily add something, configure it on the right, and that's more or less all I have to do. So in this case, I'm already happy with my form. So let's say mark as ready. And of course, typically when somebody submits something, so in this case, my travel approval, something needs to happen with it. There's a process that needs to start. And that's something that you configure under automations. I already started building as what we call a playbook, which are multiple steps in a process. And the difference between, for example, Workflow Studio and what Creator Studio does is that Creator Studio has a limited set of activities available out of the box. By default, currently for this release, there's only 3 actual activities that you can use: request approval, assign to, and create task. And you can create placeholders so that more senior or real ServiceNow developers, more experienced, can then fill in the blanks. So placeholder is nothing more than filling in the blanks for your process. So the idea is that these type of processes that are created by business people that are part of the service catalog are very simple, and some of these activities or these activities initially should be sufficient. So I created a approval. So you have to fill in some of the fields. In this case, I'm the approver to make sure that everything goes well, but it's also the manager. So to make sure that there's no error when there's no manager filled into for the user. Of course, that never happens, but just to be sure. You can add decisions. So you can add parallel activities in the playbook, or you can add decisions. So in here, I added a decision. Let me just see if I can still remove this. And it's very, I have to click very, there it goes. No, nothing went wrong. Of course, I shouldn't have done that. Let's see if it wants to reload. No, it does not. Let me just, for argument's sake, not use impersonation and reload my screen. And then the playbook should hopefully load again. There it is. So in this case, I added a decision. There's, of course, an approval step before this. So if approved, I'm going to assign it to somebody, which is once again the assignment step that we had. And in the other option, I actually had first a placeholder. So I wasn't able, as a citizen developer, to add the activity that I wanted. So I created a placeholder, which says to be added later, and then somebody else can fill it out. And that somebody else or should be able to work that additional activity, for example, in Workflow Studio, and in the future also in App Engine Studio. So if you want a more elaborate process with more complex activities, it means you have to step out into a Workflow Studio. As I just changed the administrator, I can do that. And it loads the same playbook, but it gives me more options instead of the limited options that you have in Creator Studio. So it's more advanced. If I then go all the, you see actually a lot more activities that you can add to the process. So Creator Studio is on purpose limiting the options that you have for a specific persona that doesn't need the full access. And once done, I activate. And the next step is then to actually submit for review. Reason that I don't create a UI for fulfillers is the fact that by default, the activities or the requests you create in Creator Studio all end up in the same workspace. So there's one generic request app workspace. This is an example where you will see all of the created activities or created requests which end up as tasks. So here you see there's a generic finance request. They will all end up in the same workspace under their own category. And of course, only if you are allowed to access, you will see the specific categories. So it means in this case, there's a task which is submitted, and the task is to change a cost center. And it needs approval, so there might be approvers attached to it, but that depends on the process. That's part of that. So you don't have to create a separate workspace. There won't be a multitude of workspaces for all the record producers or for all the forms that you create in Creator Studio. They actually end up in one workspace, and you only get access to the ones that are relevant for you based on your role. And the last step, like I said, is to submit for review. And this is the same submit as you would see in App Manager Studio. So if I go to continue, I need to say everything's ready for review, my playbook and my form, yes. And I need to have a version for it. So new version with an additional, and of course, field on the form. Don't mind my typing. I don't know why the space bar isn't working. So I submit for review, and then I just have to wait for my application to be deployed, of course, when it's approved. So from Creator Studio, I switch back to my production environment where we just saw the request for an application. Now I want to look at the deployment request. But before that, let me go a little bit into an overview of App Engine Management Center. So the way the deployment works is through something called a pipeline. So in my case, I have two pipelines that should not be both active, but they are. So here is my application pipeline that has now one request coming from Creator Studio. My environment by coincidence is called Creator Studio. And I have another pipeline where I have additional step in between because it's also deploying to staging environment. So you can see that I have one new request here. And if I open up the request, it's for the regional travel approval. And the next step for the administrator or the responsible person for application development is to say that this application is approved to go to testing, because the next step is in the pipeline is actually to release something from development into testing. Of course, I could have reviewed a lot more of the information, like all of the spelling mistakes that I made. But the idea is that I'm now going to run or deploy my application to test. While we wait for that, let's look at some of the other capabilities. One of the things that Ashutosh already discussed is the visibility on your developer population. So App Engine Management Center gives you information about the number of developers that are allowed to develop on the instances. And per developer, and let's look at Elsa, you can see which application, in this case she, is working on or working with the team on. She's owner of a lot of the applications, but also she's UX designer on one of them. And I can zoom in and I can get more information about the application itself. So I switch to the custom apps overview. So here you see also the inventory of all of the custom applications that have been deployed on this instance or are being deployed. And of course, I can once again zoom in, and you can even get user experience and analytics. So the applications itself are integrated with user experience analytics. So if you would access a portal, access a service catalog item, it would show up and you could see the session time, the page loading time, etc., etc. And of course, I can still switch to App Engine Studio in this case because it's an App Engine Studio based application. I can see deployment history if I would pick an application that's been deployed properly. So there's a wealth of information available as a cockpit, like Ashutosh said, in App Engine Management Center. Now let's continue with our deployment. As you can see, it's now in review. So if all went well, it's now deployed on my test environment. You can see that it has a number of test cases that has been run, or a test suite that has been run. So you can specify ATF test suites to be run. And in this case, we have a specific one for application deployment that is automatically run during deployment. So before we deploy it on test, ATF tests are automatically run. And also an instance scan is configured to be run. And that's, of course, that's optional, but it's very smart to do to make sure that everything will work when you deploy to an environment. And the next step is then to approve to a production environment. And this is where we're going to hit the change management capabilities that Ashutosh also mentioned, which have been released in the previous version. So I can approve and I can create a change request. And that's important because if I want to release something to production, it might be different teams that are responsible for production environment, and they work with a special change advisory board, for example, a specific change process. So we leverage the change management process that we have in ServiceNow for deployment of the applications, the custom apps that we build with Creator Studio, with App Engine Studio, and that are deployed through the pipelines. So a change request is created for my application, and now I need to open that. And now I'm going to work on a change request. In this case, I'm the same person, but in reality, this would be a different person working on a change request because they are responsible, or a different group, they are responsible for the production environment, and they need to assess if this application can go to production. They might have different standards, look at different things. So I'm going to assess it. It means move to assess. And that means I'm going to review all the information and determine if this is ready for production. Assess means that that an approval is going out to the group responsible. In this case, that's Elsa and Franklin. And let's approve that request for now. I've done the assessment. This application is ready for production. It's gone through a testing phase. Everything is approved. There's a relevant user story attached to it. So I'm going to approve it. Now, going back to my change request, you will see that there's also a change management board approval, but for the demo purposes, this was an automatic approval. So we don't have to go to an additional manual approval. It's actually already approved. What we also do is we create a CI. So we integrate the application that we deploy into the CMDB. So for this version, the specific version of this specific application, we create a CI so that you can also track, maintain uptime, create incidents against them, etc., etc. Everything that is relevant for that. And finally, if everything is approved, the last step is to remember again, the last step is that actually it's now scheduled, of course, so it's implemented and it's scheduled. So an automatic deployment is scheduled. You can define when it is scheduled, and then deployment will take place on production. So it makes sense that this is a scheduled deployment instead of a manual interactive deployment, because you have maintenance windows on production and you want to adhere to those maintenance production. So deployments are scheduled and not automatically done, and of course scheduled within the maintenance window. So if all is done, it means your application is live on production. So you can see Creator Studio following the same paradigm as App Engine Studio and leveraging the capabilities of App Engine Management Center, using the pipelines for deployment, and integrating fully in all of the capabilities that you have in Management Center to implement the governance procedures that you have, that you define in your specific organization. Tim, that's the demo so far.
Yeah, thank you very much for this demo. Very interesting to see how much easier it even got with Creator Studio now to build catalog items, and that's how that it's still like seamlessly integrated with App Engine Management Center. At this point of time, we have some time left for any questions you might have. Are there any questions at this point? If not, then I want to thank you, both Jul and Ashutosh, for this webinar today, for sharing all your insights and the demo. We will share the recording of this webinar with all of you afterwards. And thank you all for attending today, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.